This is take two. You all, if you probably saw our epic failure earlier today. Look, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I thought we could swing this. Kelton texted me and said there's like the greatest wreck ever on the bridge. And I was like, oh, whatever. Kelton's probably just hung over or something, running late. And then I looked, there was a wreck. I was like, oh, he's probably just hung over and he just thought that'd be a good excuse. And then I saw no. So I thought I can probably do this, right? I'm a grown man. I own a few businesses. I mean, I went to SEMO, hell. No, I couldn't. As you saw, there was just no way. And Lincoln, I thought, well, maybe technologically somewhat savvy. No. The two of us plugging in wires was, I mean, he just quit because he saw this. And then we tried to run it and you saw what happened. So I'm a believer. Like if you have a guest and there's a problem, we can't deliver the guest. We always want to get somebody more important, like a bigger guest. So we put our heads together and we got Lincoln's boss, Pat Thomas. Thank you so much for making the time and bailing us out and making me look not quite as dumb as I would have otherwise.
Well, thanks for having me. I always look forward to chatting with you.
The Geyer Award-winning Pat Thomas. That is from a former curator who made me swear not to ever divulge. This, look at this.
Beautiful.
My buddy Larry and Herman sent me this. Look at the
3D version of the couple
and hair. This is kind of, it reminds me we're getting close. Anytime you start to get to the state fair, there's different events in the state, right? You have your 4th of July is a lot of fun. It leads into co-op annual meetings and it leads into the primary season every other year. Then the state fair is right after that.
Right.
Then you go right from the state fair into Labor Day veto session. And after veto session, Oktoberfest.
There you go. You did forget the chicken fries for the Catholic churches that come between Memorial Day and Labor Day.
Yeah, no, I get those, but they're
kind of a big deal.
In SEMO, they're a little earlier. They're kind of pre-4th of July. So they kind of wind down around the 4th. And then there's like fall picnic type things.
But a lot of watermelon stuff.
Yeah. Yep. So you guys had a little bit of a session, huh?
We had a great session.
I mean, it is. I've asked Lincoln this and different folks. All the things you've done in state government. And for the folks you don't know, you should know. Pat Thompson is the chief of staff to Senator Huff. She's worked for Senator Munslinger. We got to get his sign up. I've
love the sign.
And I got a Munslinger. Look at this.
I may have edited and done that. That was my work.
Outstanding. I love those old papers. Pat has been around state government for a while. There is nobody that walks through the halls of the Capitol and people say ma'am and treat with more respect than you. And I thank you for making the time to join us and to bail us out. You've done a lot of things in state government. You've had a long career. When you get done and you're looking back on it, I don't think you're going to have anything you've ever done that touches what you've done here with rebuilding I-70. I don't know what you could do that would be that big of a deal.
I think for the entire state, I-70 is definitely the biggest deal ever. And I guess I liken that back to the fact that I'm not only a Lincoln Huff fan and a Brian Munslinger fan, but a Kip Bond fan.
Yep.
And I think if there's one thing that Kit could say would have made a huge difference at times throughout the last 30 to 40 years, it's a generational investment like this. But, to have the largest investment in state infrastructure, and I-70 is a big chunk of that, but the governor's got $14+ billion structured for infrastructure over the next 5 years. And that's already bonded and ready to roll. Lots of pieces all over the state. When you take that and then you put that on top of the largest tax cut ever last fall, this governor and the legislature have accomplished a lot of things together.
I want to get to the tax cut, but I just go back to I'm from the boot heel. It really will not have a direct impact on the business directly for many people in the boot heel, frankly. There's been improvements. If you want to get to Kansas City, you generally can take 60 and then go up from Springfield or somewhere. If you want to get to Jefferson City, you rent a donkey and you just go through the hills. But the fact of the matter is, and it's not something we like to admit in rural Missouri, but a lot of the roads and free cheese and government services, frankly, come from St. Louis, Kansas City, that corridor. And that corridor being redone and revitalized, it will benefit this entire state, which will benefit if you're in McDonald County. If you're standing on that spot where all the states come together, you will benefit from I-70 indirectly, but it'll be a legitimate indirect benefit to you. I honestly, when I guess it wasn't, I didn't hear him start talking about this even privately until session had kind of got underway.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like there was a lot of pencil whipping and work and strategy and kind of bank shots had to come together. But I mean, I didn't really think that was possible. I really thought in my lifetime, the governor's State of the State speech, I thought, okay, you're going to do 3 intersections, and God knows that one in Columbia needs it. I thought, okay, we've all been stuck. I don't know the Kansas City one as well, but I know the Wentzville one is a train wreck, and I know the Columbia one's the worst thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anything as bad as that 65-70 intersection in Columbia. I thought, well, that's a great idea. That's practical. That's Mike Parson, right? And as session went on, and Lincoln talked about it a little bit at dinner or informally, and then he started to kind of mention it publicly on the show once, and it came together. I mean, it is a transformational thing for the state.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look back, I mean, can you give me any insight on how many things had to come together? I always see that big stack of papers on your desk as the budget process goes. You can kind of tell where the budget is by how tall that stack of stuff.
Papers.
And then there's always this magical in spreadsheets you've got over here on the left. Kind of break down how that came together.
Well, so the director of MoDOT came in the day of the State of the State, and he said, this is what the governor's going to present. And we certainly hope as the Senate approach chair that you'll be able to support that. And Lincoln just looked at him and he said, I think we can do better. He said, give me a number. What's the total? 3 lanes each side all the way across the state. What do we need to do? And he said 2.8, 2.9 billion. And Lincoln said, okay. He said, that's our goal. And then he kind of went about what he does that people don't often understand. He did the pencil part. What does that look like? How much is it if we do cash? How much cash do I think I can pull out of this budget directly versus how much can we bond? How much do I think the conservatives are willing to bond? We have to find that finite economic point where what our bond payment will be versus what we're paying currently in maintenance.
Yeah.
And make it reasonable. And that's exactly what Lincoln Huff set out to do, was to figure out that economic equation. And then he shared it with some of the people that would be mostly involved. Senator Fitzwater was hugely supportive. Senator Fitzwater in his first year, he's a great guy.
He just
a good person.
Yeah, he gets government. I mean, he's
here
honest
to govern, but for him to be part of delivering I-70, his entire district touches I-70. And for him to do that the first year, wow, what a deal.
He's just a bright guy. You know what I mean? When you talk to him, he doesn't, I mean, politicians have to do some squirrely things. That's just the way life is. But when you talk to him privately, he gets government and he's a serious person.
Yep.
And while that may seem like a low bar, in today's world, that is not a low bar. And he's a serious person that can actually figure, when you think of talking about going and doing the work of putting the pieces together, there's not many people I would say could do that, but he's the type of guy that could, on a complicated project, actually help you put pieces together.
Right.
Come up with ideas.
Right. And so he said, look, I'm the transportation chair, what I can do. And we were still talking to the House.
And his dad's the greatest mayor
of ever.
Maybe ever.
Of
no doubt.
America
Where are you
City.
going to put the statue for Ron here in town?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find a spot for that. So then Lincoln, we were talking to the House guys and they were kind of kicking the can down the road. They didn't put it in the main budget. They waited and put the governor's request in Senate or House Bill 19. So the budget gets to us. Lincoln's met with OA and the bonding people. I mean, meeting upon meeting. And if you want to talk about something that, I've jokingly told people, but out of all of this, I want a hard hat that looks like it's literally been beat to crap, because I said meetings where you're trying to get everybody to understand.
You want this Kennedy Indian?
That's not enough. No, I want the hard hat that looks like somebody pounded it on the road.
I got to check with Dalton. I don't know if we can do this, but I wore this the other day with Cardetti. But there you go.
Those guys are going to play huge. You don't think about the impact of the number of internships and apprenticeships this kind of job is going to take for all the people who do this kind of work across the state.
And this is the kind of work, I mean, the trades have to be involved, because
100%.
It is a bit of a cliche sometimes, and I at times I'll hear this, and I don't take it seriously, but you do have to have skilled workers to do this, and if you don't, you're going to have to do it twice. It's going to cost you more money. I mean, this is the kind of thing you need legitimate skilled people doing, because I mean, it probably is the most important piece of infrastructure in our state. And if you count the bridges that lead over, this is the big, like for the country, one of the biggest things you could do.
But I would say that those skilled workers, while we are going to need more of them than we have in probably 2 decades, They're not all going to be found on I-70. This budget included $100 million additional dollars for low and minor volume roads. You want to talk about the guy in Kennett, Missouri who thinks he's not getting anything out of the I-70 deal? There's $100 million in there.
I really believe
for this year.
I think he'll benefit from the I-70 deal.
Yeah, but there's more direct benefits coming too. And then there's that additional money that's in the STIP projects that MoDOT set aside that we've now seen they've turned the corner over there and they're trying to do better.
You know what? Patrick McKenna is a guy, I don't want to act like I know him extremely well, but I've got to know him. And I'll tell you, is Patrick McKenna going to be asked to host a game show? Yeah, probably not.
No.
Patrick McKenna could be a touch dry, almost like an engineer, because that's what he is. And I tell you, when I first got into politics, I was not a big fan of MoDOT. I mean, they'd come out with this bonding plan that was going to do nothing for our part of the state, and they had basically shelved 67. And I paid attention to MoDOT because that's how I came into politics. Was kind of complaining. I just think it's a well-ran department right now. Now you can criticize it's, you have an important department when no matter what you could have a differing opinion and criticize it, right? And so it is an important department, and people can make honest criticisms about, well, they should do this differently. But I think MoDOT's extremely well ran right now.
Well, I mean, I think they've turned the corner on people's criticisms, but it's like we've seen with the budget. Everyone is never going to all be happy. There's a lot of great things in this budget, and people are upset because some of their smaller things didn't quite make it across the finish line. But there's something for everyone in this state in this budget, whether it's fully funding education, teacher pay, mental health increases, a brand new mental health facility going in Kansas City. Again, those are going to require the same builders and workers. And if we're looking at the national economy right now, anything that we can have set aside to pay for to get us through a rough 3 or 4 years is going to help Missouri come through a rough national economy better.
Well, too, I mean, a lot of this money people talk about, you have to spend some of this money, right? Or you have to give it back. And some of this money the federal government is saying they're going to try to take.
We're into general revenue now. We're spending general revenue because Parson did such a great job in the first 2 years of taking the federal money and utilizing it everywhere he could and holding his own money. He was great, very decisive in that, and very good job on his team.
I think, a tax cut always sounds good, right?
And we did that.
Here's the thing. I wonder how many Missourians got that pay stub and saw while it's a lot of money overall to the state government, I wonder how many people looked at that pay stub and thought, okay, I've saved $3 this quarter. It feels like I don't know that state taxes make that much difference. Maybe when you're bringing 100 jobs and you've got a CEO that's, I'm not going to pretend they don't make a difference. I think they do. I always thought Governor Nixon had a good approach. Little property tax, little sales tax, little income tax. Try to keep all as low as you can.
Mm-hmm.
The tax cut. Do you worry that the person that's the chief of staff to the appropriations chair after you may have handed them a headache?
For sure. We tried very carefully to look at projections for 4, 5, and 6 years down the line so that we've minimized that. And the way we did that was by doing strictly projects and not program increases, right? So the increase in cost will come from the cost of taking care of our loved ones who are underfunded in nursing homes or have mental health issues that we're trying to help in facilities, right? And do our best to manage those costs and then not increase the number of programs.
It just feels like I had Senator Eigel on my television show, and Senator Eigel is one of the best interviews, not just in the party, but period. I mean, he's interesting when he says things. But Bill Eigel was a businessman before he was a politician, and so there's a whole cadre of W-2 Republicans that tell you how to create jobs, and they're experts on it. Now, they've never created a job, mind you, but they'll, like they wouldn't know that when you come in to work and the person that knows all the computers is stuck on the bridge, you have to give him a raise, right? Because you look like a fool in front of everybody, and he come in and now this is probably going to work great. And, but he was telling me about how we're gonna cut property taxes, and I'm like, well, when you look at that property tax bill, I mean, those property taxes are set by the local folks.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And they go to fund local things. And St. Charles County has a great ambulance service, right? It's top notch. But like anything, you pay top notch for top notch. I mean, you don't really do more with less. You do less with less.
Mhm.
And it feels like at the state level, you may be walking. There may be ramifications people aren't talking about today. And he mentioned about how there's more money in state government. Like, well, but that's that federal money that you either spend or you send it to California, and not Montauk County, Alice Tuttle, California, hippie
Right.
Bergenstock, California. And so it just feels like there's I think everybody after COVID had a little feel in the pit of their stomach that, okay, this is scary. I'm glad we got through it, but there will be a time to pay the piper for this.
Mhm.
And whether that's a recession or whatever, I think in most folks' minds, somewhere you're like, okay, this can't go on forever.
Right.
Something, the bottom will fall out of something.
So I appreciate Senator Eigel's approach to wanting to cut personal property taxes. I hate writing that check personally, or having my husband write that check as much as anybody. But I think what we have to realize is that when you're sitting in a chamber with 34 members and you each represent a great variety of districts, right? Some of those districts have items inside those county budgets that have no other source of income. And so you have to be cautious, and maybe we don't know. If you're a senator from Poplar Bluff, or you may not know how North Missouri necessarily collects their property tax or what it's used to spend on. We may not all have a casino that gives us $1 per person per visit check into our counties to help offset those costs either. So some of those counties don't have that kind of form of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of
You
that
might find some of
locks
these counties
them up.
won't have a landfill now.
Right. So those things all have to come into play. So if we want to just give counties a blanket thing to say, hey, you can reduce your personal taxes,
that makes total sense to me.
Let them do that. But telling them they have to do that is a very dangerous.
Well, here's my thing.
Tipping point.
If you live, let's say St. Charles County, and you believe the ambulance district's budget's too big, you believe that they should be able to do more with less, or do the same with less. Run for the ambulance board, right?
Right. 100%.
If you're in a fire district in St. Louis County, and you think, well, fire protection is not worth this to me, run for the fire board. Lower your limit. You'll put on the ballot. But if you, it feels like Republicans, and I have some sympathy for this. You work really hard to get elected, right? You go to every chicken supper and you shake hands. It's hot and you're putting signs up, and you get elected and you're fired up. You want to cut taxes, and they say, Clyde, come here and talk for a second. We've cut taxes like 4 times. The court's probably going to not let us do it again because we fund education somehow. And he's like, well, damn. And then, you know what? I'm going to get toddlers have Uzis. And like, oh, Clyde, come here, buddy. Toddlers already have Uzis in Missouri. And they're like, oh, I'm going to get rid of all the abortions. Oh, damn, Clyde, strike 3, buddy. There's no more abortions. Well, if you're Clyde, you want to do something to get likes on Facebook, right? So you come up with, I'll cut property. I'll cut someone else's taxes. I'll claim credit for it. And I'll let the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department figure out how to answer calls with no cars. It's not they won't blame me for it. It's a bit of it's like that time of use billing. You know, that the people that'll get the grief won't be the PSC. No one knows who that is. Won't really be the governor. Won't be Lincoln. It'll be the utility companies. People ticked about their bills. And I think the same thing when you're sitting in Warren County and somebody breaks in your house and they can't get there for 45 minutes. Well, and the whole time the commissioner's saying, hey, this doesn't work. Can't do this. But the state forces it. Nobody's going to be mad at the state. They're going to be mad at the local sheriff.
Right.
And I understand frustration with having a majority for 20 years and a supermajority for 10 years and the governor and the supermajority for what are we at, 6 now, 7. I respect that frustration. But there is something said for running government well.
It's not sexy, and it's a hard game plan to sell on a primary election ballot. But governing, there is something to be said for good governing.
And I think
did your family have to call social services 5 times to get something fixed, or was it fixed on the first time? Did you need the duplicate health your health license or your birth certificate or death certificate? Something was misspelled. How long did it take to get it fixed? How long does it take at the motor vehicle? Those things. Let's make government run well for the people.
And so I guess, thinking backwards a little bit, it's going to be tough because, there's a good case. the part that's kind of challenging is there was a good fix. Roger Eady is an old assessor, smart guy,
I like Roger.
Benton County, salt of the earth dude. He's like, well, the way we fix, because everybody's property taxes shot up on their car. If you had a used cars are worth more because of the pandemic or whatever.
Right.
They shoot up. Everybody's like, what the hell is this? And I get that. I was the same way. So he's like, we'll average that out, and they're going to be up, but it won't be spikes. And I was like, that makes sense. But I guess you couldn't get that done because people want to do the whole thing, right?
Right. And he had a very good point that after 10 or 12 years, they've depreciated so much on personal property tax that we're probably spending more to bill on that in some counties than what we're actually getting back in return. So there's a finite line there, and I think that bill gets done.
There's some things though that I tried to ask Bill about, and I get it. When you're running for governor, like you have to kind of have have to be crazy. I mean, you have three intelligent people trying to convince a state they're the dumbest three people in this state.
Right.
And so it's when you're running for governor primary, it's not the time for you to lay out serious policy. And I get it. I interview people all the time. I'm not, and that's why I didn't just sit and harp on him, because I get if you're a very liberal person and you think that if you had the situation Republicans have where they win all the elections, you'd have a primary for governor. And if in that primary, all three people could try to convince you they're nuts. It's not a Republican thing. It's not a J. Ashcroft thing. It's the truth of how real life is. But I do think that there is a real point. They had an election here in Cole County where the library was trying to double their revenue. Now, listen, I thought the library, if they have time to go out and help the meter and try to support meter maids, maybe you take that position that has the time to go try to harass people and you cut that and save money. Or maybe you cut the homeless people lockers at the library, which is actually a thing. But I think it's just bullshit. Well, I don't know what you'd call it in Cole County, but in West Butler County, we call it bullshit. Having an election in August with nothing else on the ballot, that's ridiculous.
The amount that was spent to put that issue on the ballot was a concern in general, because I do live here. And
which it went down.
Buddy Mike Carter. Down.
What's up, buddy?
Pretty hard. But I think if they would come back with another plan that was strictly repairing the roof, doing the HVAC, and a 5-year bond or something like that, the citizens of Cole County like to be supportive. There's, I believe I read a statement from the library that was just total bullshit. It said that citizens here are just anti-tax. Well, we hardly ever actually turn down a tax. We do the ones where we can see results and then renew them. And to think that this was going to go forever scared people. It was a big jump, 75% just on the library line, let's be clear, but it was for forever. I think if they'd said we want to do 10 cents and we want to do it at a 5-year increment.
Let's say they did that. Is it not the right thing to do? I mean, a lot of these property taxes have gotten where they've gotten because you have these ridiculous elections
in August
that shouldn't be there. I mean, to me, look, I think you're probably going to have an election in the off year for things that come up in a hurry. I get that.
Right.
But there's a municipal election day that people are used to voting.
April.
If you want a light turnout election, but other than that, you have every other year, you have 2 days to have elections.
Mm-hmm.
And then every year you have an April election that is maybe not in a rural county. They don't have municipal elections, but still, at least there's something you could do.
School board or something should be on there.
Something, yes. That's right. To Idle's point that people don't know, I agree with that to a certain extent. If you made every tax has a sunset, I think going forward, if you took every tax and said, look, no municipal tax over this dollar, come up with some figure, have Travis Fitzwater come up with some smart person figure.
Exactly.
I think that's totally makes sense.
I just think the ballot becomes so long, people don't vote.
Well,
I think you have to have some in August, some in August, some in November, right?
I feel like it should be hard to raise taxes.
I don't disagree with that. I'm tired of paying them.
And these people at the library didn't pick this day out of a hat.
They had a consultant.
They picked this day because they thought very few people would vote. And there's nothing wrong with it. People do it all over the state. If your goal is to raise revenue for the library, if you and I were on that, if we wanted, we'd have done the same thing. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, take that off the table and say you could do February, or you can do the April ballot. That ballot's not that long.
Right.
And to me, I just think there's a common sense way to go about this. And in the meantime, if you're a state rep who thinks the school's budget's too big, run for school board, put it on the ballot and lower it. Or for the next time, everything over a certain value is sunsetted at 10 years, 20 years. If you're going to bond something, you might need 20 years for that.
Right.
So fine, 20 years, and then people can go back and see if you did a good job. I see nothing wrong with this sunset. I mean, we're the show me state. Go show me. So last money question. It feels like in the air that the St. Charles County delegation did not like the governor's line item vetoes. Nobody likes their stuff line item vetoed. I would say Springfield. I mean, Springfield does very, very well in the appropriations process. So even when they get some of their stuff lopped off, they are still very, very well treated by the state of Missouri.
Well, but to be fair, we were about 20% of the vetoes this year.
I would say that none of Cliff Smart's neighbors had the right to be too put out with the current appropriations coming from
We
Jeff
lost a big road that's important to our community too.
City.
But it'll eventually, it's on the STIP plan. We just wanted it faster.
Something tells me that you will look back on this particular time of Senator Huff being in the appropriations committee and view that as the good old days, and it probably doesn't get a lot better. I think a lot of other Senate districts would trade. But that said, St. Charles County got some line item vetoes. Everybody that wants to do a line item veto, I mean, Senator Hageman had a pretty established he wasn't going to do it. You have a new appropriations chairman that you never really know until you get there in September. But it feels like now, if you don't do St. Charles, you can't do any of them, right?
Right.
And I don't think there's 18 votes to give St. Charles County money.
Well, just looking at the votes, I'm a vote counter in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And just looking at the votes, 34 people, 10 Democrats, 6 or 8 on a more conservative side that probably didn't vote for the bill anyway. So now why would they want to vote for more spending?
Yeah, Mike thought they were right.
And,
Mike agreed with them.
And so then why would 2 or 3 in the middle, who maybe it does or doesn't impact their district, and maybe they're just going to say, well, I'll vote for yours if you'll vote for mine. But wait, I can't really trust you because I couldn't trust you before on how you were going to vote. So I think there's a lot of personality at play in the Missouri Senate, and it takes a lot to count those votes.
So of a sign of knowledge prediction from the Guy Award-winning Pat Thomas, do you do budget overrides?
Today, I would say no.
Yeah, it just feels like.
I think there's better ways for people to learn to accomplish what they want.
I agree, but I think the people that are, I think that's I think history's proven that to be very accurate. I just don't see a way you could. And in a little bit, like if you're Nick Shore, I kind of get it. You're going to want to go first because, and I don't think you'll get 17 of your colleagues to commit to vote with you to give your county money.
Well, the problem is we get the bills in order, so they don't get to dictate what would go first or second.
But I mean, however they did it, I don't think people.
So they're coming over in order if the House does them. Now the House does a lot of things, but. You get them to us, and I mean, it's just
how does that? So is it? But these are line items inside a bill, right?
Right, and they pick them up in order.
But as the budget's printed, you go by that. That's how you would do it.
Yeah.
I didn't know because there hasn't been one in a long time.
Right. Well, we did a few when I was in Mumslinger's office under Nixon, of course.
Sure, I'm just saying. Since I paid attention,
and they picked just a few that were important to the caucus, and they just did those.
You had more of a caucus then.
But we had a caucus, and we had to go find a 23rd vote even then.
Yeah.
I would say, though, that there's a lot of ways that if somebody's really upset, whether it's the locals who feel like their project weighed more and didn't get the weight and the thoughtfulness it should have gotten, there's ways they can reach out to people. We can help connect them with grants, other projects, other programs. I've already heard of a couple that the lines were vetoed, but they've been connected to some other funds that are either going to come federally or through some state grant programs. So there's some of that was overlap, and that's why those programs were vetoed to start with. So before they get upset, I'd encourage them to reach out to somebody and do some due diligence.
Yeah, I don't like the chance of that, but I look, I get
it might not happen, but there's at least options, Scott.
If I was Nick and this was my first year, I'd be frustrated too. I don't think Senator Eigel was surprised or particularly angry. I think he may have known what was coming, right? It matters how your colleagues view you and how you interact with them.
Okay, well, let's consider the fact that the St. Charles delegation, maybe not the entire delegation, comes to the floor and wants to continually talk about cutting personal property tax. But then you want to come to the state and ask for $5 million to help fund a water project. Maybe you should have used some personal property money to fix the water project.
That's awfully well thought out for St. Charles County.
No, Steve Ellman's a smart guy. I have total faith.
Steve Ellman, there's a litany. I tell you what, there's a really good crop of legislators I've met. Wendy Hausman
She's smart.
is
She's
going
on
to
it.
be a very good legislator. I mean, Adam Squadron, I think that guy's got a lot of sense.
You know, Adam handled our Senate Bill 24 in the House for the PTSD for first responders. Did a great job. Was great to work with.
And I'll give you a closet pick. This would be interesting. I think there'll be people, and again, he's running a primary, so he's going to have to.
Yeah.
I think Phil Crispinelli will be an excellent state senator.
Phil and I go a long way back on the Missouri Republican Party State Committee. Nice
I think Phil has. Now, is he from St. Charles County? Yes, so he's nuts. But I think his colleagues will respect him. I think he'll be the ideas other people scream about but don't get done. Be careful when Phil gets there. He won't be screaming, but he'll leave with a wall of shadow boxes somewhere. Those signed bills. He may not put them on his wall, but he'll if he goes to the Senate, he'll be very effective. I got to thank my buddy. I was looking through here. Look at this back in the day. Vote Democrat, Symington Holman. That's cool. Right. Then speaking of, I was worried the governor and Lincoln are flying around a little plane today. I was like, oh my God. And then going back to Governor Ashcroft.
Yep.
I appreciate these. I got to come up with something for the stickers. I have it. My buddy Dave Cook. Dave, I need another scarf. We're about to run out of room here on the UFCW button scarf, but the stuff you all send us, I very much appreciate. I do display it. If you're in town for anything, come by. If I'm not here, Kelton, somebody will show you around. I appreciate everything. We're constantly trying to think of a good way to display more, so we're very grateful to everyone.
You know what I noticed last week? America's mayor used the Marriott Courtyard, I think, for his announcement for Brian Crane to be the new city administrator.
You like that guy?
I like what I hear.
Yeah,
I haven't met him personally.
Nice,
but you know, the Marriott Courtyard's a pretty great place.
I mean, if you're out in the States somewhere and you're coming to Jeff City and you want money for your community, for your project, and you're going to want to come see Pap. And she says where you stay, if you say something besides Marriott, I mean, JV, it's just not great. Also, you gotta check this out. You have Ameren here, right? It's your house.
Yeah.
But a lot of us are on co-ops. United Electric, but tell you, it's not just the electric, it's the fiber they lay. And this, I got to call Jim. I'm going up next week. Next week. I think we may tape the show up in St. Joseph next week. That's where we're about to confirm that. This is going to be tough for Badger to come up with that. United Electric Co-op, that is a cast iron skillet. I mean,
we could really hit some heads in the Senate with that.
You keep Doug in line with this.
That's an option.
And you probably need two of these, one for the office too.
Well, yeah.
For Lincoln, But anyhow, let's talk Republican Party. Very interesting primary for governor.
Uh-huh.
You go way back with Phil, but you go back with the Republican Party, period. It feels to me like Jay Ashcroft could have run away with this, with his name ID, and he's ran successfully twice on the ballot. I kind of feel like the name ID is still very big, but I do think in the Trump era, legacy names aren't, 20 years ago, this might not even been a race. Mm-hmm. The access folks have to information and the way Facebook has let people connect and gather. I think Bill Eigel is definitely a factor in this race. And I don't, obviously, if you're handicapping, Jay Ashcroft's the favorite. No question about it. But Bill Eigel, you would think, well, not going to happen. I don't think that's true at all. I think Bill has a chance to win. Is it the shortest straw of the three? Probably so, but it's definitely there. And I think Mike Kehoe, I thought he had the danger of Mike Kehoe's campaign. He's a serious person who's done serious things. He would raise a lot of money and he would be Chris Koster 2.0. He would get all these endorsements. And at the end of the day, he would be talking to people like himself, and they don't represent enough of the current Republican Party to win. But I've seen him get aggressive and get a little crazy, frankly. And I think that's what he had to do. And I think the dynamic of Bill Eigel being a force, who I think is picking Jay Ashcroft's pocket a little bit, and Mike Kehoe adapting to the reality of the situation he's in, I think Jay Ashcroft's still a favorite and will be with that name ID until people get a little more strategic and media starts running. I'm of the belief that this is not this is not a coronation for sure. That I think Kehoe's chances, in my opinion, have went up a little bit. from the beginning. Eigel's chances have went up a little bit, and I think both of them have been at the expense of Jay Ashcroft's odds. If I had it when this started, you'd have Jay up here and maybe Mike and then Bill. I think Bill's come up, and I think they've I think it's more of a race than it would have been than you might have handicapped it 6 months ago. Am I wrong?
No, you have three very serious contenders, and they're all representing very different factions. The one thing I hear from people consistently.
But what factions? Are there 3 factions?
I don't know, but you said they're picking each other's pockets. So yes, there's different groups. Pockets. But I think Missourians want the people I hear from want somebody who's serious on taxes. They want to know that somebody has signed the front and the back of a paycheck, and they want to know how they get government's business. Everybody wants to talk about how Bill Eigel wants to say this budget was too big at $52 billion, but I'm going to say that's a big business, and you're running a big business. So you need to pick somebody who can actually run a big business. There's different types of people you can elect. Some are those that are very thought-provoking and idealistic. There are those who are going to get down in the dirt, run the business, and make the government turn out the best it can for the taxpayer.
I see your point. I Republican primary voters, it feels like to me, are really kind of break into 2 crews. Real pissed off, and they don't care. Just hurt, and let the chips fall and burn it down. And then you have your more folks that say, well, I want to accomplish something. I want to see some good results, those type of folks.
Right.
And I think
my concern is that Eigel and Kehoe at this point are sharing off of that business group.
I don't think that business group will kick in for Bill Eigel until he actually files for governor. I actually think Bill Eigel's running for governor. I think he was before. I could be wrong about that.
No, I think he's running for governor.
The truth is, I think some of the support, Bill Eigel will have some money that will come his way once he's actually on paper filing.
Bill Eigel has done an excellent job of tapping into a group of people who felt they weren't being heard. And he has more single donors as individual people than the others. Maybe even combined. I haven't looked at the number.
He's doing a good job on the internet, prospect building lists, and it's
takes a different election to run than either the people who are advising Ashcroft or Kehoe have ever done.
Yeah, I think that everybody talks about, this election is different. I think technology is making this election.
And 24-hour news and access to social media and all those things are going to make this a very different beast to watch.
Yeah, people say that, but I think it's true, and it's true because the culture is evolving, and it's true because of technology. I think technology is a huge part of why that actually is not a platitude. I think there's real ways you can point to it and see that for real in this particular election. Give me down ballot. What do you think of Andrew Bailey and Will Scharf?
I like them both. I've worked with both of them. Worked with Will when he was at the governor's office for Greitens. That's when I got to know him. And Andrew, I've been impressed with his bio and how he took reins and just kept moving forward when the spot came open.
But you have competing arguments. Won't be the incumbent should do well and win. Missourians generally re-elect incumbent statewide elected officials. Then you have whoever has the most money will win, and I think Will have by far the most money. So you got almost 2 competing general narratives coming at once. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Down ballot, I think it's just if they can get into a group and make sure that their people vote that day.
Has everybody that's going to run for Secretary of State announced?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Or treasurer.
Really? If you're Vivek Malik, you're raising a lot of money. You're going to have
tapping into a group that most Missourians didn't know would donate.
Well, I think he's the only person they'll donate to, right? Or for sure the first time.
Yeah.
I think Vivek Malik is going to put together a very, very competitive, serious campaign. I think there's some, this is Missouri, and we're just talking hogs, dogs, and logs. There will be some folks that might be able to be persuaded not to vote for him for reasons that have nothing to do with his
right,
work
not his
or
ability.
Ideology. But I think having 2 guys kind of coming from that I'm not him, dropping that, it'll be subtle racism and subtle pointing out differences that have nothing to do with running, but it is what it is. And, everybody running Vivek's campaign do the same thing if they were sitting across in a different campaign. But I think 2 folks make him have a big advantage. And if those three file, and I think a fourth probably helps him, doesn't it?
I would think.
I mean, I think as long
Because
as
he'll have more money.
yeah, a 3-person race, I think Vivek Malik is going to be the favorite because he's the incumbent and he's going to raise more money than everybody else. But I think in the day, with those two serious candidates, I mean, he becomes the favorite.
I don't think you're done seeing lieutenant governor either.
Yeah, I mean, anymore, let's just be honest. There's not so many consultants who make their living.
Right.
They're gonna every consultant is gonna attempt to have a candidate in every race, just because that's how they feed their families.
Unless they've been asked to bow out because they have somebody in the governor's race that they don't want to be conflicting.
I say that. What do you think? So Lemke's got I think a very, very smart strategy. If you've got, and I don't know to the extent, but if you've got Hoskins and Idle running, and you got Koenig, they've been very closely aligned in the state Senate. I would think you could shave a lot of cost by coordinating signs and staff. I think that's a very
the party
smart
we've always
strategy.
As the party we've always attempted to do that. Now we have to do that post primary.
Yeah.
But we did that way back in 2008 with Gibbons and Kinder. Back in the day, the Clean Missouri was a lot different, right? We could do a lot of things, but we ran vans all over the state, and on one side would be a Kinder sign, and on one side would be a Gibbons sign, and they were out putting them up and delivering. So everywhere we had the ability, you saw 2 4x8s.
Yeah, I think Jim's got a good idea there. I think that is from just a practical running a campaign perspective. I think you save some money with that.
If you've got one out, you might as well have 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, I think that could be a bigger deal than what folks are thinking. State fair time. You heading over tomorrow?
I guess even in the boot, I will try to hit the governor's ham breakfast tomorrow.
If you didn't know, Pat, Lincoln finally got out of line, and so when she was kicking the shit out of him, she ended up hurting her foot. So she's been a little laid up. Well, surely they'll get you a golf cart, right?
I think Lincoln has arranged for that, which I'm extremely grateful for, because I was just not going to go, and I was really going to miss seeing all my friends.
It would shock me if a Caleb cart's not there, accessible, and ready for you. I would be very disappointed if a Caleb cart's not ready to go.
I do just love the fair.
I do too. I always do.
And then there's just good people, and you learn so much about the state.
I saw Chart had a thing about fried deviled eggs. I'm in.
Oh, I'm not in on the fried. I do love the pork in the beef house, the ice cream at the.
I heard there was a birthday party at the fair last weekend.
Oh.
Was there not?
Oh, Hunter's.
Yes.
Yes, my son Hunter had some friends, and they occupied one of the boxes for the Lainey Wilson concert. Had a great time.
I heard Lainey Wilson from someone younger than me is a big deal. I'm too old, I think, to know.
You're caught in the middle.
Or just totally left behind, I think.
You didn't know the Yellowstone thing?
No.
Oh, she's on Yellowstone.
Oh, what character is she?
No, she sings on Yellowstone.
Oh, she sings on the yeah.
So,
I know the characters. I don't know the song.
So, and evidently bell bottoms are a thing, Scott.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
That's because of her. They had a bell bottom contest.
And she's a country singer?
Yeah.
I'll be damned.
Life is changing, man. You got to catch up.
Yeah, I kind of don't. I don't catch up, and I'm not sure I'm missing much. All right, Pat Thomas, thank you so much for coming in. I didn't know how we were gonna recover from today, the debacle of the Keltonless broadcast. I do think we're gonna come back this afternoon with Lincoln, or maybe in the morning, and we'll tell jokes probably most of the time, to be honest with you, but we'll ask him a few of these same questions, see if we can find some differences. That'd be fun. If he asks, you check with Pat, because you probably don't mean that answer. We'll have a good time with him. I don't know exactly when, but Kelton will be here for that, so it'll actually work and you can hear it. Until then, this week, every year, our big episode from the State Fair, we'll have the 57th Governor of the great state of Missouri. Mike Parson will be our guest. Will be a lot of fun. We will be at the State Fair. It will be a great time. I'm telling you, there is nothing better than the Missouri State Fair. You earn your sunburn. You go down the Midway. It is top flight fun. Ag dinner, right? Wednesday night, followed then by the ham breakfast, and then we'll tape the show. We'll go have it will be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for making the time. We'll see all of you Sunday for This Week in Missouri Politics.